You're watching Moments with Jill Walker. Today I'm talking about when prayers aren't answered. Haven't we all wondered, at least one time in our life, why a prayer wasn't answered? Maybe multiple prayers, but we're hesitant to admit it to other people that we've looked up and said, God, why? Sometimes with tears streaming down our face, we wonder, why? God, we know you can do it. One of my favorite verses is Matthew 19:26. With God, all things are possible. Why? Sometimes we wonder, God, why were my prayers not answered? I'm a positive, happy person. I really am. And sometimes I've prayed prayers. I'm thinking of one in particular. It's confidential, so I'm not going to tell you, at least not yet. But in the right timing, when it does get answered, then I'll share it. But, about 10 years ago, I was desiring something, and I was praying about it. And when my prayer got answered, it was like opposite of what I prayed. And during the last 10 years, I've wondered, God, I prayed it, I believed it, and my faith was strong, and I even fasted some during those days that I was praying about the situation. And it got answered, but it wasn't answered the way I prayed. Now, here's some reasons that I have thought about why maybe sometimes our prayers aren't answered. One is maybe they were selfish prayers. Now, this isn't the case for every time your prayer is not answered, so hear me out. Maybe they're selfish prayers. Maybe they're prayers that are out of God's will. In Mark chapter 10, verse 38, Jesus said to some of his disciples, "You know not what ye ask." In other words, he said to them, you're asking me for something that you really don't know the full measure, the full result, and the cost. Now, I don't mean price tag. I'm talking about a surrender. He said to them in Mark chapter 10, verse 38, you don't know what you're asking. You see, sometimes our prayers aren't answered because they're out of God's will or they're selfish prayers. Another reason may be God has a better plan we are not aware of. I like that one, don't you? So just because our prayers aren't answered doesn't necessarily mean they won't be sometime down the road. Another reason maybe is that God has a job for us to do. Or maybe you have prayed for God to heal somebody, but they passed away. What I'm saying is maybe God had something for them to do in heaven. And maybe somebody else will get saved through that loved one's passing. I know sometimes people don't want to hear that answer, but there's always an answer. We just may not know it while we're here on earth until we get to heaven. But that's why we need to trust God in every situation. Another reason why our prayers may not be answered is that there's sin in our life. That's right. And finally, and there's many other reasons, but these are just 6 that I came up with. God has a greater plan than what you're asking him for. He has something even bigger, but the timing is not right. You've got to wait for God's timing. So when our prayers aren't answered, it doesn't always mean it's a denial. It just may be a delay because he has something better for me and for you. Why aren't our prayers answered? I don't know the reasons why, but I'll tell you this. I'm going to love God even if some of my prayers aren't answered, because I don't serve and love God just for what he can give to me. I serve and love God for what he's already done in my heart and given to me, which is a home in heaven someday. You see, he's not like a Santa Claus in the sky. No, he's a holy, holy, awesome, omnipotent and omniscient God that cares about you and me. When King David prayed and wanted that baby to live, the baby of King David and Bathsheba, the baby didn't live. His prayers were not answered. King David's prayers, the king, his prayers weren't answered. But he said in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 23, I shall go to him, meaning that baby, someday, but he shall not return to me. That's what he said when he found out that his baby had passed. Just a little baby. And some of his aides and assistants were afraid to tell him that the baby died, because he was fasting and praying and just doing everything he could do to see that prayer answered. But it wasn't answered. And what did he do? He changed clothes, the Bible said. He washed himself. He started eating again and stopped his fasting. And they were so puzzled. Well, while the baby was alive, he was not acting this way. And now the baby died. He's changed his clothes. He shaved. He ate his food. It's because he felt the comfort of God. Even though his prayers were not answered, he loved God anyway. You see, when you go through great trials, you'll see how much great love that you have in your heart for God, even if your prayers are not answered. Remember this as I close. A no is not necessarily a rejection, but maybe it's a new path, plan, or direction that God has for you. Remember that. God always loves you, and he has a plan for you according to Jeremiah 29:11. And it's for good and not for evil, to give you an expected end. So keep praying, keep believing, and keep loving God, even when there's times that your prayers are not answered. There's always a reason, but keep being faithful to him, because all things do really work together for good. To them who love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. God bless you today.